All right. Hi, everyone. And thanks for joining me for the Career Upgrade podcast. I'm really excited today because we have a special guest joining us today. The guest is Mr. Steve Orrin, who is the federal CTO at Intel. So prior to joining Intel, he was a serial entrepreneur. Steve, why don't you tell us a little more about how did you actually start your career? Because now we look at your profile and it's full of great achievements. But I guess all our listeners, software developers, and IT professionals, they are interested in how did you actually start, and eventually how they can actually also progress to such level as you are.
Well, thank you, Michael, and it's a pleasure to be here today. And it's a really interesting question. So if you go back to the beginning of my career, it was really, at the time, an opportunity to go try something different. Going back into the mid and early 90s, I saw a problem in that there was a lack of security for email and desktop systems. This was way early in the whole internet revolution, and when you looked at sort of some of the areas that were being focused on or not, I saw a need. And I think one of the things that sort of helped drive my career is taking the risk and jumping over the chasm and just going and trying it. And so I started building a little a widget that would actually start interacting with email programs to encrypt email, and pulled together a team, got some funding together, and built a small company to go off and try to do something that wasn't being done. And I think the key aspect was looking for where there was a gap, and it isn't always the obvious gap. There were products on the market to encrypt files and encrypt email at the time, but they were all command line based. And so you really had to be a fairly technical person, especially in the 90s, to be able to use any of those products. And a lot of the technical people used the products. There were existing products in the market, but none of them had a UI, and as I like to say, that was easy enough for my mom to use. And that was our target market, not necessarily my mother, but doctors, lawyers, accountants, people who actually had files they wanted to protect. And that was really our focus, was to build a good security product, but to do it in such a way that was easy to use. And so when you think about doing that novel idea, it's not only about the whiz-bang technology or the really cool widget you're going to build, and it had some really cool features, but it was understanding who your customer was or who your end target was and seeing what their needs. And that was something I learned a couple of times throughout my career of doing different startups. Is I'd come up with a really interesting idea, or I'd hear a problem that I think, oh, that would be interesting to solve. But then you're really understanding, what does the customer actually want, or what would make their job easier, is where I was able to take technologies and make them successful. And oftentimes it takes fits and starts. I've had my second company, we started down one path around a security capability for big enterprises. And as part of our discovery and doing beta testing with our customers, we found that they had a bigger problem that had nothing to do with security. It just had to do with access, being able to get things online. And so we were able to sort of do a shift with our existing technology and help them get their mainframe applications onto the internet before they ever had to worry about securing those same applications. And so a lot of times it's about listening. Listening to the customer, or whoever your target market is. If it's an enterprise customer, if it's a consumer, if it's another business, it's being able to listen to their problems and understand they don't know what their problem is, but they know what their challenges are. And once you listen to what their challenges, then thinking about, well, how can I help them? And that's the way to be successful, is finding out what makes their lives easier, what reduces their cost or reduces their time to market. And if you can solve that problem, there's an opportunity there. And that's sort of also how you differentiate yourself from the 400 other companies out there that may look like they're doing similar things, is when you can focus on the customer problem.
And this is probably the hardest part when it comes to developing some products, right? Because, or at least from my experience, while we were developing our products, like you can code a website, you can, code some API, but really to code something that is easy to use, has good user interface, and people can actually use it effectively, that's so much harder, right? So definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my mentors, Dan Gear from back in the day, gave me a maxim. He said, every button click that you require a user to do, you lose half your users. I mean, he was being a little bit facetious, but the idea is that every time you ask somebody to do something, you're putting another step in the process, you're losing basically their focus, their energy, their efficiency. And so he kept beating into me, reduce the number of clicks, reduce the number of steps. And that really comes to when you think about usability and ease of use, it's really about, can you get to what they want to do fast? And thinking through how you get them there, or how you sort of template up a lot of activities that they don't need to push buttons for if it's a common function they want to do. And that really resonated with me and resonated with the customers as we looked at ways to reduce the amount of steps to get to what they actually wanted to accomplish. That was a really good maxim.
Interesting. And I can imagine this also applies to your hiring strategy, right? Are you looking for developers who can build some effective, solutions that developers can use? Users can use. Like, how do you actually interview these developers? What skills do you focus on during your interview selection?
It's a really good question, Michael. When we think about the developers and the architects that we're looking for, there are a couple of key criteria. One, I'm looking for diversity of thought and diversity of experience. And that's really one of the career guidance I give to the people I mentor, is that don't be only one thing. Don't be just an expert in this one area. Get some diverse ideas, because you'll learn things in these other areas that'll help influence your core. And so I look for people who've done multiple things or have got experience in multiple parts, whether it be different, inside versus web-based applications, different programming languages, different markets, healthcare versus financial services. When you have that kind of diversity, it gives you different ways of looking at problems, different ideas about how things get solved in different locations. And even just a couple of extra experiences goes a long way to helping you be better at dealing with uncertainty and dealing with the unknown. And what we're looking for are people who are willing to take risks and go try the impossible, if you will, go try to solve the big problems. So I think that's one thing, is having diversity in the candidate and in their experience. The other is, and it goes to that idea of being able to take risks, someone who's really able to take the lead and go try things, to be able to be given not necessarily the most concrete of requirements. Because oftentimes, even in the best organizations, you really don't know the actual requirements. You know what you want to get to, but not necessarily how to get there. So challenging developers to get out of their comfort zone and be able to build solutions, more as a pathfinding or prototyping exercise. Go try and error, go try things. And so when I look at Ken, I just want to say, did they try things? What were projects? And I'm a firm believer that we learn through failures, because failures aren't really failures, they're learning experience.
And it's really interesting that you say that developers should be trying things to get this diverse experience, but what does it really mean in practice? Like, say you are talking to a junior developer or mid-level developer who is, just exploring options out there and doesn't really know how to take what you say into practice. Like, what would you advise to such person?
So that's a good question, and I'll look at my own past to give some examples. Going back again to the mid to late 90s. One of the things I took on for myself is, at the time I was conversant in C, C++, sort of the classical languages. And there was this new language at the time that was gaining some traction in certain technical worlds, and that was Python. Again, now everyone knows Python, and it's pretty de rigueur. But back then it was sort of only used in a couple places. It wasn't really getting the credence in the academic world. And so I went off and learned it on my own, and started building, sort of little apps out of it. And then it ended up turning out to be a great platform for building all sorts of prototypes and fast, agile development. But it was taking that initiative to go try something new. So nowadays it wouldn't be Python, it'd be go trying Rust, or learning, going off into a completely different, learning R, and being able to do, some of the stuff that data analysts have to use to get familiar with their use cases. Going and looking at some of the open source programs out there and learning one and contributing to it. That's one of the interesting things, and we've done this internally at Intel, is when we do sort of cycle developers through and give, want to enrich their experience, oftentimes we'll put them onto one of the many open source projects that we support to help them get visibility into other programming styles and other usages. So if they're communications experts, we'll put them onto a storage project. And that's where they gain that different experience. And so as a developer early in your career looking for things to do, the open source community is always willing to have more hands and more help. And it's an opportunity to not only learn a new area, but to also have a community where you can get help, and you can ask questions, and you can get so that support from the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And so things like going out and taking the initiative to either learn a new language, to go become part of an open source community and start contributing to any one of the million projects that are available out there. Finding a problem internally. So when you're one of the things that I found, and Google has it as a formal process, we do it as a less formal process, but having time built into your schedule to go off and try those interesting ideas. So setting aside some time, whether it be during your workday or after hours, to go try something new. So you're working at a large software development company, you feel like you'd like to increase your career, increase your capability, find a problem that IT is having in another place and go build a little prototype and see, well, could I solve this problem? And then once you've done it and you say, oh, look, I've been able to do something that allows you to schedule trouble tickets faster through a little web app, go present it. Get onto the staff and say, hey, I want to show the IT director a little widget I built that could help automate a process. Mm-hmm. And you'll find that people are open to that because they'll say, oh my gosh, this is a guy or a gal who thinks outside the box, who put in the initiative to go solve a problem that we were going to have to, it was low on our priority list because, there's 12 other things, but it's something they did. And that's the way you get on the radar of the people that you want to help you move up your career. I think one of the key things that is really important is find good mentors. And they're not, it takes some effort. They're not, a lot of organizations now are starting to think about how do they get their senior developers and senior tech leaders to take on more mentorship opportunities. But oftentimes, especially in large organizations, it's hard. And so look for opportunities where you can connect to technical leaders, either in your domain or even better, outside of your domain, and ask them to, and you'll find that most of us are happy to help. And so ask for mentorship and get those mentors to help you, whether it be on career advancement, technical capabilities, or other aspects of just learning the organization. In my career, finding those mentors has always been an important thing. I had some really good early mentors in the cryptography space when I first started out, in the security space, and in the developer space. And those mentors have gone on to become lifelong friends and colleagues. And in one case, one of my mentors ended up working for me at a future company. So it's the stories can become interesting over time.
I can imagine. And you also mentioned open source, to contribute to open source project. And I was just talking to someone, some developers just recently, and they felt a little overwhelmed, right? Because there are so many open source projects out there, and also so many programming languages and so many tools a developer early in their career can learn. So based on what you are seeing on the market, what would you say are the most important skills or technologies to learn? I don't know, like obviously JavaScript, a lot of companies are using, but something that you probably use, not personally, but in Intel, and you see huge demand for.
So I think there's a couple answers to that. I'm going to start with the open source side. Again, there's so many technologies, so many open source projects. But if you think about what are the big bets right now, and it really comes down to three big things. If you think about what's driving all of the innovation: AI and machine learning, next generation communication, so let's call it 5G and the 5G related technologies, and then cloud native architectures, so things like serverless and microservices. Those are opportunities, every one of those. There are lots of, if you wanted to learn the languages behind data science and behind machine learning, understanding TensorFlow and Caffe, those tool and frameworks, learning R from a data science perspective, learn Tableau to understand how do you take data and visualize it. There are a lot of open source tools and training courses and free available material, and I wouldn't say it's easy, because let's face it, AI is not easy, but it's easy to get access to the information to start learning that. 5G is going to be transformational. People are just now starting to feel, you get the marketing from the big telecom providers that are going to change the way you do things. But when you look inside organizations, manufacturing, industrial, smart cities, 5G is transformational. And behind the scenes, there's a lot of technology that enables that. And it's a lot of open source technology like Orrin and others that are the foundational pieces that are open source projects. A lot of what we've done in the network side, like software-defined networking, is a key component of 5G. And so there's opportunities there. And then some of the most exciting spaces right now, and I've got my own team out learning these technologies right now because we have looking at things like Lambda services and microservices. And you can go to AWS or Azure or Google and get a free account and start playing with these technologies today and start building a couple of apps out of microservices. And that's going to be the wave of the future. If you think about how an application will be built over the next 5 years, a large majority of them are going to be built out of microservices and delivered as a service. And so coming up to speed on those kind of technologies are going to be one of the key differentiators from the old way of just building big, monolithic programs. There's still going to be need for that, but how that gets realized into the market is going to be, there's going to be a microservice, there's going to be an API. And so taking the initiative now to learn those technologies, and the good news is you don't have to go back to school to do it. There's online courses. I've got one of my engineers is basically spending his lunchtime taking Amazon courses that are freely available, and then he goes off and tries and creates a couple microservices, and it's fun because you get the nice thing about those technologies is you get to see the results fairly quickly. It's not like the old days where you had to build a program, compile it break, keep redoing. 6 weeks later you have something. You can have an outcome fairly quickly, so you actually get to see the results of your work fairly fast in these cloud native style environments. So it's an exciting area to actually do that kind of development.
Yeah. Some people get the instant gratification on Instagram, and others while building up some microservices, right? Cool.
So the best is build a microservice out of Instagram.
Now, when you mentioned your colleague studying some online courses, what's your view or opinion on universities in general? I mean, in general, for developers or for technical positions, like, do you see this still as necessary? How do you see this?
So that's an interesting question, and I know that there's hot debate about, do you need to go to university? I think one of the things that universities will do, besides giving you some practical skills, it gives you a work ethic, and I think that's something that can't be forgotten. When you go work for a large company or even a small company, you're expected to put in the hours, expected to do the work, and expected to play nice with others. And so what universities will give you is that structure, and will give you some of those foundations. I often look at it, so universities will give you the tools you need to learn how to learn. Mm-hmm. They don't always give you the most practical information. There's exceptions, but they don't always give you the practical. They're not going to teach you everything you know to be an excellent Amazon developer or an excellent a memory controller developer. But they're going to give you the tools you need to learn how to learn, so that when you end up in that big organization or even a small company startup, you know that you have the mental building blocks and the tools in order to figure out how to go learn the things you don't know. So universities are absolutely important. It gives you, and also it's an opportunity to try things and get diverse ideas, to go off and do things, to take courses outside of your area. So if you're focused on an EE, go take some courses elsewhere to learn some other things, because that, again, diversity drives better, overall it will drive your career better, because it will give you different ways of thinking about these different experiences. EEs, learning computer science, or even learning biology or other things. It's about learning and about the process of how to learn. Because nobody, in every career, you're never going to know everything you need to know from the get-go or even now. And even the most senior technical leaders are always learning. We're always learning. And so university gives you the tools to learn. And if you're in a good program at a university, they also gives you opportunity to go try things. Many of the advanced courses are go build a stack, go build a solution. And you've seen countless stories of universities and graduate students that did something cool inside college and then did their startup out of it once they graduated. One of the things I'm seeing a lot of universities do, and I've worked with San Diego, University of California, San Diego is a good example of this, and some others, where the university students are actually working on research projects that are funded by organizations like the government or corporations. And so they're getting real world practical experience while in university on developing, sort of not innovative, novel approaches to those kind of big, hairy problems. Intel has, university programs where we fund professors and their students to go tackle a big problem that's 5-10 years down the road. So most of the big tech companies do this. There's a whole, the division of government, the NSF, will do grant funding to go solve the big hairy problems. And and international European Union universities do this as well. So if you're in college right now, go find a professor that has one of those grants, that's working with a large tech company or with a government agency. Get on that program, because you're going to learn a problem. You're going to get to experience something that is coming from industry. Those problems, those grants and those funds are usually go solve some big problem that isn't being solved today. And so it's the opportunity to go try something different and get real world experience while still learning in the university environment.
And I'm really glad you are mentioning this, because a lot of students may be just passive, right, when it comes to just taking some courses or probably going the easy road. But like some proactivity definitely helps to get most out of the university studies. Cool. So say now someone who is already a little further in their career, some say mid-level developer, and he's exploring opportunities out there, has acquired already some of these skills, say, whether it is AI, ML, or serverless, or Python, or some of these other, programming languages. So has already some, skills. How can such person get to work at Intel?
So I think there's a couple ways, to go about that. Number one, every company, Intel, Google, all of them, we have, a whole site dedicated to, finding opportunities, interesting projects, interesting opportunities. So the information is out there, and when you apply, the system actually will get you in. Like, so when you apply to those jobs, there's people behind it. It's not just an automated tool. There are people that are actually looking at, because they, one of the things in big companies, what you'll find, especially in the tech sector, maybe not in the others, but in tech sector, when you open a rec to hire a software developer for a particular project, you're actually rated how fast you can get that person in. So you have a concerted effort to go fill that rec, because there are other teams that want that rec for their projects. And so when you're given a head count, they're active on it. So when you apply to it, someone's going to look at your resume. So that's number one, is go apply to the jobs that you want. Be proactive there. Don't wait for the companies to come to you. At the same time, and here's where doing some of that stuff we were talking about earlier really comes in play. Getting involved in an open source community, being prolific, being vocal in the open source community, gets you on the radar of the tech companies. Oftentimes, tech companies will go look and see who's the biggest contributors, or who's the ones who are providing the best support for this particular open source tool, or this particular program, or this project. And they'll go actively recruit those people, because they want that expertise, that talent, and that type of initiative, that smart people inside their organization, both to be able to provide that value, but also to help basically mentor others. And so getting involved in the open source and in the community, not just throwing out code, but actually being involved in the community, volunteering your hours, is a way to get on the radar of the tech companies. And it's not just the big ones like Intel and Google. Small, nimble companies that are at the early stages oftentimes are very heavily involved in open source and are actively recruiting out of the open source community. So that is a one key way to get on their radar. The other is whether it be through speaker circuit or going to conferences and speaking, presenting papers, writing papers. So being public, having a public side. And I know for a lot of developers, it's almost an unnatural act. But I tell you, the folks that typically, when you're looking at, they're looking at, well, what have they published? Or when you're saying, well, we're looking for someone who's an expert in X, where do we go to go find that? We go look at, well, who's published papers on it? Who's talked about it on conference? Who's done a podcast on that topic? So being, sort of having a public persona, getting out there, whether it be, and it doesn't have to be at, sort of big industry conference, it could be at very niche conferences. Looking at, so you're looking at a memory conference, or looking at the Amazon, sort of education conference. Getting a talk in there and speaking is how you get on the radar of these organizations. And then lastly is reaching out to those organizations, connecting with people at those organizations, making connection. Something else I was taught very early in my career, it's not often always what you know, it's who you know. And it doesn't necessarily, it means making those connections, whether directly or getting on their radar so that they know that you exist. Those are some of the key things I would say that help sort of junior and mid-level developers sort of raise their profile. Is raising their profile, is getting on those different radars. And like I said, the open source one is a really good one because there's a lot of companies that are actively involved in open source that have specialists out there. And it's an opportunity, if you're contributing and they're contributing, for you to interact with them and to get, to basically create that connection, so that when they're being asked later by somebody, well, hey, I'm looking for a really good software developer, they can say, well, I know this guy, this woman that has been contributing amazing stuff on this little program out there. We should go target her. We should go try to recruit her. Mm-hmm. And so that's how these things happen. It's word of mouth. It's getting on the radars. It's basically raising your profile.
Mm-hmm. Be prolific. Be active.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Okay. And now, say there are people who are exploring opportunities out there. They see your career side, but they also see some other career sides, and they are wondering, like, oh my God, like, there are so many opportunities out there. So many companies are looking for JavaScript developers or, whatever, front and back and full stack developers. Like, why a developer should join a company such as Intel over some other companies?
So that's an interesting question, Michael. And I think, Intel is a unique opportunity to have global impact. And that's one of the reasons why I've been excited to be at Intel now for over 16 years, is that when we go off and we go, try to accomplish something or to implement a new feature, it's the impact. And the best example I can give is the difference between one of my startups and Intel. One of my more successful startups, we had 500 of the Fortune 1000 companies using our product and our tool. And so there was a small team in all of those companies that was using our product, and that was a huge success for a small startup. Mm-hmm. We had cracked the Fortune 500 and had half of them using our product. Wow. The first feature I worked on at Intel ended up going into 40 million laptops. It's the impact you can have. That's the difference when you go work at a company like Intel or a company, one of these larger tech companies, is that you can have impact at a global scale. Also, these companies are looking at those hard problems. It's not just about selling, chips or selling software if you're Microsoft. It's about looking at how can we make the world a better place. And so, to give example, when COVID first struck back in the early 2020, Intel took the initiative to look at, well, what are things we could do besides just for making sure we can help individual communities and getting sort of PPEs and other materials. What were some technology things we could do? And we spun up a whole bunch of groups to go do things like making the ventilators more efficient. Looking at scanning equipment and saying, were there ways that we could help those scanners operate better or be able to reduce the time from when you do the test to getting the results? How can we make it easier for hospitals to do logistics? And so we could go solve those problems because we have the scale and we have the expertise. We know how to optimize code. We know how to reduce latency. And you'd be amazed, like sometimes as simple as just being able to move data from point A to point B 10 times faster meant the difference between hours and minutes. And that could make the difference in healthcare when you talk about hundreds of thousands of tests. And so what you get the opportunity to do Intel is to have that kind of global impact and to go solve not just big, huge problems, but also ones that actually make a difference to the community. And I think that's been one of the really exciting things about Intel, is that you really get to go solve those kind of problems or get put on projects that have that kind of impact. Plus, you get to surround yourself with some of the smartest people on the planet. I mean, when you think about the standards that we all take advantage of and use, USB, PCI, these were invented here. And so when you get the opportunity to learn from the technologists that actually created the things that we all take advantage of and we all get to use in our daily lives, it's a unique opportunity that you don't find in a whole lot of other places.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's very inspiring, really very inspiring. I guess like if there is a developer out there listening to this, he or she will just not want to work on any boring website again. It's just a question if he or she will get a job at Intel at the end of the day, right?
Well, it's interesting, I think don't think of websites as boring, because websites themselves can make an impact, and there are organizations that are looking for, and this is sort of the question that a developer needs to ask. What is the kind of things they want to do? There are organizations, there are small companies out there that are doing amazing things to help the community. whether it be Geeks Without Frontiers as an example of a nonprofit that uses technology to help, in the areas of human trafficking or in being able to do contraband detection and things along those lines. There are companies out there that are looking about being able to set up wireless networks in environments where you have limited internet, so that people can get internet all the way to remote villages, so they can get remote healthcare. So even building a website that makes it easy for those kind of apps and tools is an opportunity. So you can take what you think are mundane skills like website development and backend stack and LAMP stack development, and apply it to things that actually make a difference. And there are organizations out there looking for people that want to contribute and want to be able to do good as well. And then you also have opportunities to go change the world with big novel ideas, whether it's how social media works in the future, how AI is going to be applied and used. There's opportunities out there. And so all skills are necessary. I wouldn't say that web development isn't a good skill. Web development's important because we all use the web. You want to make sure that what you're doing actually meets with what it is. How do you think? Have I contributed? What have I done? And find organizations that allow you to do that.
Wow. Well, and how to find these organizations? Because like really, there is no other way. Like based on what you say, really, like just how to find these organizations is the natural question, right? How to get to work for such an organization, if not Intel, like how else, or how to find these organizations?
It's a good question. So one way to do is, working at Intel, we get to work with these organizations. So come work at Intel, and we do get to work with all these organizations. But also, if there's a cause that you're passionate about, look to see who's funding those causes. If it's a government agency, USAID, which is one of the agencies in the U.S. government that funds, healthcare and education on a global scale, see who they're funding to go solve some of those problems. And those organizations are the ones that are building the solutions. The Gates Foundation or other foundations, see what companies they're working with. That's how you find some of these novel small companies that are out doing interesting things, is you find where the causes that you're passionate about, and see where the money is flowing and who it's flowing to. And those are the organizations that you can go work for that are actually driving change in those causes.
I see.
And sometimes you have to think outside the box, because what you would think, Habitat for Humanity or any of these others, really good cause-driven organizations also need tech capabilities. You think of them mostly as out building houses, but behind the scenes, there's someone who's driving logistics. There's a software that drives those businesses. Every business today, every organization is driven by software and driven by infrastructure. And so even ones that aren't classic IT organizations, trust me, they need IT help. And so there's opportunities out there for cause-related activity. Or come work at a large company like an Intel or an Amazon or Microsoft. We do have, and we do support those causes, and we have teams of developers that are working with those organizations to, again, help in all of these cases, in disaster relief and the like. And so there's opportunities even at the big companies to do that type of good work.
And they can rotate from one project to another every
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah. Like you shared a lot of amazing insights. So that's just so inspiring and really impressive to see how you think about the IT career, and just the impactful work at the end of the day, which really matters. Is there anything you would like to pass on to people who are early in their careers before we wrap it up? Some like key takeaway you want these IT professionals to remember for the rest of their lives?
So I think there's two things that I would leave you with. I like to say, try things, break things, go out there and do things. Try, that I think is one of the most important life lessons that you can have in your career, is don't be afraid to go do things and to go try things. And like I say, break things. Because that's how you learn and that's how you actually advance. And then the second is a piece of advice that I was given early in my career, is surround yourself with people smarter than yourself. And so that because we're always constantly learning. I learn as much from the people I mentor as they do from me, and oftentimes more. And so take the opportunity, even if you're early in your career, there's someone who's earlier. Mentor them, pay it forward, and you'd be amazed. You'll learn things from them as well. And together, you'll all grow. And so I think of those two things are key takeaways: is to go off and try stuff, and to seek out the people in your life that can help you or that you can help, because it is always going to be a two-way street.
Definitely, definitely, and that's also a good reminder for me to revisit the people I'm interacting with. You know, the circle of the closest five, as they call it. So, great recommendations also to try out new things and revisit the people you spend time with. Cool, great. Thanks a lot, Steve, for all your insights. So for everyone listening to this, they may go to intel.com to explore the job openings, right? And they can find a little more about you on LinkedIn. So guys, you can just go to LinkedIn and look for Steve Orrin with double R, right? Steve Orrin, and see what Steve is up to. So thanks a lot, Steve, for joining us. It's been great having you.
Thank you very much, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.